Hey everyone, before the show starts, just want to give a quick reminder. If you're listening to this Saturday, June 20th, there's a Gene Wilder improv show tonight at 8 p.m. over at Fountain Valley Summerfest. You can go to summerfestfv.com, get Summerfest tickets, and again, it'll be 8 p.m. So yeah, come see the improv team that I'm on. It'll be a lot of fun. All right, so thank you for your time and enjoy the show. You're listening to Delayed Replay, the podcast where we recap and review movies that got delayed in that other universe for various reasons, but came out on time in our universe, and therefore come out pretty different for some reason. You might think this is improvised, and well, that's on you. I'm Steven Shinder, and welcome to the show. Airing sometimes every other week, sometimes one week and then the next week. It really depends. Just roll with it. Season 7. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we recap or review movies that got delayed or did not come out in that other universe, but came out on time in our universe. I'm your host, Steven Shinder, and on this episode, which is about Hunchback, the live-action remake of Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, it's pretty much just me for this episode. I asked a couple people, they were busy, and even my other self had some scheduling issues, but you'll hear from him after my discussion of this movie, and he'll share non-spoiler thoughts about Toy Story 5 and whatever else he's been watching lately. So, yeah, Hunchback, this remake came out. Man, the years are blurring together. Was it 2022, 23, 4, 1? I don't know. It came out in the 2020s. And yeah, I had to give this a rewatch to really reaffirm how I felt about this film. But I should go back and share my thoughts on the original animated version. And I put original in air quotes because, of course, Hunchback of Notre Dame is a story that originated from a Victor Hugo book, or written work, So there have been different iterations, even horror iterations, and there was a weird modern college one from the 80s, which I'll touch on that in a moment. But yeah, the 2D animated version is actually something that I had seen the commercial for on the old VHS of Toy Story 1 that I would watch as a kid. But my first time watching the film Hunchback of Notre Dame in full was probably not until a few years into elementary school, at least that I remember. Maybe it was played when I was a little kid somewhere and I just forgot, but I think I might have been in class and it was like a break day or something. Maybe it was like a Friday or something, and we watched some of the movie, but I don't think we were able to watch the whole thing. And I think I caught the rest of it at some later point at did I watch the rest of it on Disney Channel at some point? I don't know, but I know for sure that I watched it in full on Disney Plus when that became a thing in late 2019. And it was around the time that I was starting to watch the old Gargoyles TV show, which is really well written. I thought it would be kind of a fun thing because both those things have gargoyles in them. And, stuff about the gargoyles when I get into this Hunchback live action discussion, of course. But overall, the film, it was such an interesting thing where you have this character who has these, what would be considered an undesirable, unconventional appearance. And I'm trying to be as cautious with my wording as possible since I don't know what would be considered out of line, but I think y'all know what I mean. And there are these people who in the city and also of religious faith who are looking down on him, and also you have Froyo, who is, that's how his name is pronounced, Froyo, not Frollo, or yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, I think it's Frollo. And the message of the movie, okay, I do remember back in high school. So for reference, Disney Plus became a thing almost a year and a half after I graduated from college. I went to high school from 2009 to 2013, and I remember specifically this would have been in an art class I had during the last 2 years of high school. So I remember a classmate mentioning that he didn't like the message of Hunchback of Notre Dame because, in that Disney 2D animated version, you have um, Quasimodo. He has a crush on Esmeralda, and she likes Phoebus, who was more conventionally attractive, and you really feel bad for Quasimodo and how he has these feelings, but in the end, this classmate basically spoiled for me that he doesn't end up with the love interest, and he's like, what kind of a message is that? So when I finally got around to watching the whole thing as an adult, in late 2019, I saw the whole thing play out, and I was really sad because, at that time I was pretty insecure myself about not being in a committed relationship, or there were just some things I felt uncertain. But over time, looking back, I appreciate how it shows that you can get over those types of feelings, because like helping out a couple friends can be enough. And to be fair, the straight to video sequel, Hunchback of Notre Dame 2, which, the animation is not up to par. It's cheaper looking, but in that one, it feels like it was kind of made just to give Quasimodo a love interest that would pan out. But yeah, it exists. It's okay, I guess. But yeah, that first movie just had a lot going on for you. You had Frollo being a creep and oppressing the Romani people in that movie. And yeah, that song Hellfire. It's very bold and daring for what people might think of for a Disney movie. So yeah, bringing it to live action for this version, it's like, how are they going to do it? And apparently, in that other universe, it's been in development hell, or maybe development hellfire. Huh, see what I did there? So, kind of tough for them to crack it. But here we've seen an attempt here in the delayed replay universe. So, how did it pan out? Well, the cast is interesting. There's it's kind of tough for me to get some of these names because like I'm just thinking of the characters first and foremost. But Josh Gad, who was on the producer side or something like that, ended up playing Quasimodo in this live action version, and it kind of feels like they were kind of afraid to go full accuracy. Maybe they weren't sure what would be considered offensive or inoffensive because, they didn't want to alienate actual people who might not look conventional. So for this movie, it kind of feels like, Josh Gad, his face looks pretty much just like himself, and maybe they put a little bit of makeup. He does have the hunchback. I mean, it's in the title, so they kind of have to, but it kind of feels like they were afraid to go too far into this. But there's this reasoning that it also feels like they have, which is this idea of people being gaslit into thinking, if gaslit is the right term, maybe fooled into thinking that they are not conventionally attractive, or if they're not conventionally attractive enough, then they might be considered undesirable. And Josh Gad has a pretty normal looking face, but I think this was trying to tap into the insecurities that people have today, even when there's nothing wrong with, or nothing out there about how they look, they still look in the mirror and think that they are not enough because of the insecurities and pressures that they face, and some of the marketing that they see for certain things, and some of the movies and shows that they see. So it kind of feels like they were trying to do something like that. But I'm kind of mixed on the overall strategy, and I've heard mixed things about this strategy from other people as well. It also feels like they were trying to give, Josh Gad's performance as Quasimodo. It felt like he was trying to do this thing with his jaw where he would move it slightly to the side. So I guess that was his way of trying to look kind of different, but it it looked kind of I know they were not trying to make it come across this way, but at times it felt kind of out of place and kind of goofy. So, yeah, and yeah, it's a choice. Yeah, I'm not really sure what to make of it. But yeah, this title, shortening it to Hunchback, that's a trend we've seen in some movies where they take the longer title of the original and then make it, I guess, more marketable. I remember when the Jim Carrey's had a Grinch skull blah, how the Grinch Stole Christmas live action movie came out. Some of us would just shorten it as the Grinch, and I guess that was kept in mind when the 3D animated version came out, and they're just like, yeah, it's just titled The Grinch. Although there have been talks that there might be a sequel to that live action movie, which, I mean, if it happens, I hope they at least remove the edgy adult humor. Really don't know what's going to happen there if it happens, but I guess we'll see. Now, again, the title change to Hunchback is also due to the fact that Quasimodo here is not from Notre Dame. Instead, they show that he is from a different city, and that city is Belgrade, Serbia. I hope I'm pronouncing that, or Belgrade, Serbia. Yeah, and I'm not really sure why they changed it to that city. I think maybe it's just so, since this is live action, they have more scenery to show. Like Notre Dame does show up, but in this version, Frollo finds Quasimodo as a baby and then decides, oh, we can't have his presence in our fine city. And so he has him sent to Serbia, which quite a long distance between there and Notre Dame. Like, I don't know why Frollo even goes out of his way to visit Quasimodo there over the years. It's yeah, it's something I'm not really sure that the movie really explains, but Quasimodo does get curious. He's wondering, where does my master go, type of thing. And so eventually, he decides to follow Frollo into Notre Dame, and I guess this is supposed to have us experience Quasimodo's awe and wonder when he sees the city for the first time, and he sees the bell tower, which he's not that familiar with in this version because he just got to the city. And the journey there was quite filler of a journey, to be honest. He almost falls into a river and encounters some, like, people on horses along the way that he tries to avoid, and they almost like run him over. But yeah, he gets to the city and oh, I forgot to mention I recently watched a version like a modern retelling of Hunchback of Notre Dame from the 80s called Big Man on Campus. And in that version there's um this guy who is like living on this college campus. I think it's UCLA in this version, which kind of strange that you wouldn't have it be Notre Dame, that university instead. But yeah, he's this wild looking I guess homeless person, and um some of his dialogue was really cringe, especially when it got kind of adult humor ish. So I'm really mad on that retelling. The humor wasn't quite my cup of tea, but it is kind of interesting to see that type of modern interpretation. But anyway, getting back to this live action Disney version, we get that scene that we're familiar with where Quasimodo is part of the costume contest, and in this version we actually get more screen time for oh, what's his name, the one who is doing all the singing and stuff. It's what was it? Oh yeah, Clopin. He gets kind of an expanded role in this version, like a more active role. But yeah, we do the costume contest, and this is what makes it really weird that people think Quasimodo is wearing a mask and are shocked when it isn't a mask. And again, like his face doesn't look that out there, or it's all these weird things about this movie. It's like, am I supposed to pretend that it looks different from how it actually looks, or am I supposed to think that these people's standards are unrealistic and more shallow than even in the animated version? Like, I don't know, but yeah, we get this scene where he's pelted with tomatoes and stuff on Frollo's orders because Frollo is really upset that Quasimodo disobeyed him. Of course, we have Esmeralda helping Quasimodo, and Phoebus, we see Phoebus working as a guard, and uh, kind of has a womanizer type of attitude and how he talks, but doesn't take it too far. It's just like slightly flirtatious when talking to women. But we do get this kind of reveal further into the movie that in this version, Phoebus is actually a woman masquerading as a man. Her name is Phoebe. And so we get this interesting relationship between her and Esmeralda. And, if this live action movie came out now, uh, I don't think it would have gone this bold of a route, given stuff that's been going on. But yeah, this is a really interesting direction. But there's also an awkwardness in Quasimodo's jealousy in light of all of this, because it makes Quasimodo come across as, even if it's unintentional, his jealousy, because he wants Esmeralda and doesn't want her to be with Phoebe. It makes him come across um, like he's maybe homophobic, and it makes him seem like one of those online trolls who are against progressiveness. And it was, maybe the intention was for that to be uncomfortable, but to have Quasimodo rolled up into that to that extent, it's like, it kind of feels like they should have taken more care in making this type of movie, because when you put Quasimodo in that category, it's like, how do you not make it seem like he seems anti-progressive if he's jealous about all of this? And it makes it even tougher to root for him, because he's a character that you're supposed to be more accepting of, and yet he's not being very accepting here. At least that's how it comes across. So yeah, I feel like it's a tough line to walk, and more care should have been taken here. I quite like the relationship between Phoebe and Esmeralda. It feels very authentic, but it does feel like there is a kitchen sink approach in that, it's interesting that you have Frollo oppressing the Romani people, and he's also against, um, the anyone who's he's it's not surprising that he is anti-queer as well. But you also have this weird choice where the gargoyles are explicitly real, like they're not in Quasimodo's imagination. There are these people who are also in hiding in this city, and they look taller and more like those bigger gargoyles in the animated Gargoyles TV show. They're even voiced by, Keith David voices Victor, Jeff Bennett voices, or Hugo, and Laverne is voiced by Marina Sirtis. So yeah, you definitely got that overlap there, and it's like, is this trying to revive the Gargoyles TV show but in live action? Like, what's going on here? It was such a weird pivot because the gargoyles in the 2D Hunchback of Notre Dame are comic relief, but here it's like, oh, because it's live action, they have to be bigger and grittier. And yeah, it just feels like there's so much happening, and people are mixed on these explicitly fantastical elements. But yeah, it does lead to this big battle in the city when everyone's being hunted by Frollo's people, and this battle sequence really dragged out. It's very reminiscent of the Hobbit movies and how that felt. And it's like, just because it's live action doesn't mean you have to drag out the action. It's really frustrating. But yeah, there's all sorts of stuff going on. There's this scene where there's a barber salon where there are people in hiding, and then they have to defend the place. They kind of use uh, these barber utensils to fight back and whatnot. And you also have these people who work on the rooftops, and so you have these roofers fighting in this battle and throwing uh where these shingles are like, bits of roof and whatnot. um so it really felt like they're trying to do a lot of stuff here just to drag out everything. And they do add a new bits of instrumental music. They do pretty much include the songs that are sung in the 2D animated film, but some of this instrumental stuff kind of feels like padding, to be honest. It's yeah, I don't know, it just doesn't feel all that inspired. Um which is a shame, but ultimately this movie does still go toward the message of, acceptance of different people is the right way to go. Frollo does still die by falling into a fire, although this time, like, the gargoyles explicitly throws him down, which I feel like that feels more extreme than perhaps a bit too over the top compared to how it happens in the 2D animated version. And for what it's worth, Quasimodo does accept Phoebe and Esmeralda being a couple. And later on, they do throw in this post credit scene, or I guess it's a mid credit scene, where he meets this blonde woman who I guess is supposed to be his love interest from Hunchback of Notre Dame 2. They don't quite name her, but it feels pretty obvious that that's the type of character it's supposed to be. But yeah, overall, it kind of feels like the studio was telling them to just basically throw everything in, like, oh, this is focusing too much on that. You need to throw this other, this gargoyle angle here, and I get the vibe that that's to throw in too much of a distraction and make the marketing look kind of intriguing to people who just want action, but that's not what I want in this type of movie. Like, I feel like it could have honed in on some of these storylines a bit more instead of just making it feel super cluttered. Um, but yeah, it's it's weird because there were good ideas here, but also some awkwardness and how some stuff was handled. So, I don't know. And the film did feel kind of slow at times. Like, it could have been done better for sure, which, even though there was stuff here. And again, with live action remakes of animated things, the colors don't stand out as much. So you're kind of setting yourself up for and whatnot. You sometimes some of the whimsy goes out the window. I know the Moana remake we talked about recently, still had the chicken and it had the pig and whatnot, but yeah, it's the same thing I've been saying. But yeah, some of the ways Quasimodo was handled, turning him kind of into a basement dweller, you even have him hanging out in a basement for an expanded amount of time of the film, and it just didn't work for me. Anyway, I guess we could go into the final thoughts and scores. So, my final thoughts and scores for Qua- Quasimodo, I almost thought that was the title of the movie, for Hunchback is it's a film that had good intentions here and there, but some of the artistry is overshadowed by some clutteredness and clunkiness. So overall, I gotta give this 6.5 out of 10 gargoyles. So yeah, it's definitely could have done some things better here. There were some good pieces here. Like I said, the Phoebe and Esmeralda relationship was interesting, but the reaction to it in universe was uncomfortable to watch, even from Quasimodo, especially from Quasimodo, I mean. And, but again, really am tired of the trolls online who are so against that type of thing. And I know why they keep doing these live action remakes. It's because of money. And you have people online also being like, oh, why don't they remake Atlantis or Treasure Planet? And like, those didn't make much money when they came out. I don't know if they would make much money if they came out today, even in live action. But yeah, I rewatched Atlantis recently for its 25th anniversary, and it's still a good movie. I can definitely see how it could have been improved, add more stuff in the journey underground and make the city look like it actually has a lot more people, but I don't need to see that in live action, just, it is what it is. I am curious to see what the comic book sequel to that will be like. There are these headlines trying to spin it as, oh, Atlantis is finally getting a sequel, but it's clickbait and it's a comic book, which, no disrespect to comics, I'm still very curious about it. But yeah, the way people are spinning the story is ridiculous just to get clicks. But yeah, interesting talking about Hunchback of Notre Dame, especially around its 30th anniversary of the 2D animated film. And while we're talking about Disney stuff, I just want to, you know, give a mention to the late Davy Chase, who voiced Lilo in Lilo and Stitch, passed away at 35, such a young age. It's very unfortunate, and yeah, definitely be missed. There are lots of tributes online, and yeah, it's just unbelievable, you know. So take a moment to remember her. All right. Now, you can email this podcast via delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on gargoyles. That's just the first thing that comes to mind. It's all I can think of right now, seemingly. You can also check out my socials, which are listed in the show notes, and go to stevenshinder.com for info on my standalones and stepping stones novels. Check out Yes Shift, the podcast I do with my dad. We reviewed the Yes album Aurora, and a couple other episodes should be out over this next week as well. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out. And yeah, so that's it for now. The next episode will be about Fast, which is the Fast and Furious reboot. But until then, here's my other self to talk about Toy Story 5 and other things he may have been watching. So without further delay, here's my other self. Hey everyone, so watched Toy Story 5 and I definitely have some thoughts, so much that I'm even going to make a spoiler video and put it on my YouTube channel, Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, sometime over the next few days. But non-spoiler thoughts, I enjoyed it. It is my least favorite of the 5 films, but I would still give it an 8 out of 10. I could maybe go up or down a quarter over time as I rewatch it, but yeah, that's how I'm feeling right now. I really appreciate that's more of Jesse's story, though I think Woody really did not need to be in the movie, at least not present around Bonnie's toys during the events of this movie. And I'll go more in depth about that in the video, but yeah, overall, it was a good watch. I am glad I saw it. It did feel like there were maybe too many ideas converging at certain points, but yeah, like I said, I'll go into that some more in the video. I do like that it does touch on younger, kids are very sometimes too focused on technology when, you know, actual interactions with friends matter more. So yeah, there's I think that's a good message there at least. Now, other stuff I've been watching, I pretty much marathoned the Toy Story franchise, so you can go to Letterboxd to see all my thoughts on each of those things, just so you're not bombarded by too much right now. There's a ridiculous amount of things I put reviews of on there. But I also finally watched Imaginary, that horror movie that had to do with a teddy bear, and there was a delayed replay episode about that a while ago. But yeah, I thought this one was boring. And there's also a really gross scene that takes place in a bathroom. So yeah, I gave that one a 4 out of 10. Um, Kind of tempted to rate it lower, a little bit lower than that, honestly. But yeah, there's that. I finally got around to watching a few of the Backrooms short films. First one kind of felt like watching a video game walkthrough, so it's maybe a 6 or 6.5 to me out of 10. Um, I watched Smile 2 and was impressed with that. It the first Smile movie didn't impress me much, but this one, maybe because of the scale and implications of it, like I give it an 8 out of 10. It was really well done. For Juneteenth, I watched this Juneteenth horror comedy movie called The Blackening, and it's pretty funny the way it deconstructs certain tropes. So yeah, I recommend giving that a watch. Let's see, I finished the first season of Legend of Vox Machina, so I still got ways to go. I watched the first 2 episodes of Ted Season 2, so I'll report back, I guess, when I'm done with that season. And episode of the season of Adventures of Superman, uh, well done. It's kind of weird that it was a Halloween episode, but not Halloweeny. But yeah, I love these characters. It looks like they're exploring more stuff with Kara and, Supergirl, which good synergy having that happen as the Supergirl movie is about to come out. I'm quite excited about that. Now, last time I was on here, I was so I was so into talking about the amazing digital circus, and the finale of that is dropping on YouTube, or has dropped on YouTube by the time you're listening to this, and I was so focused on that I forgot to bring up my thoughts on what's going on with Doctor Who. So, Russell T Davies, the showrunner of the last couple seasons, said that they're not doing the Christmas special. He said he claims he never wrote a script for it, which is just bonkers. And the BBC have put Doctor Who out to tender, which means that they're putting it out to, have try to get production companies to um, show their interest in it. They want to get a production company, and that would eventually get them new episodes. And it seems like it could be a couple years, maybe even a few years, before we get a new Doctor Who special or season. Even though it seems like they want it to happen, it looks like it will take a while. And as someone who consumes Doctor Who audio in between the TV stuff anyway, I'm fine with it. I'll still be fed, and I do think they do kind of need to figure out what the approach should be with Doctor Who, because I generally enjoyed this recent run with the 15th Doctor, but there were things here and there that were so frustratingly close to being better than they ended up being. I think that they fumbled the return of a very early classic Doctor Who character, and it's disappointing that we might not see them on the screen again with the same performer. So, and Russell T. Uh, Doctor Who should be progressive. It's good that it's progressive, but it felt like there were some things under his watch that weren't looked at hard enough. Like bringing in a trans character like Rose Noble, good choice. But then having the story include some dead naming, seemingly just to show how smart Russell is in choosing what the name assigned at birth was, just because the name meant doctor, and then showing, uh, whether intentionally or not, implying that there's a sci-fi explanation for why Rose ended up being trans. Just stuff like that really, it's like, how do you not notice those things? And other things like the TARDIS has a ramp, and yet the wheelchair bound character doesn't use it right away. Granted, that could have depended on when those moments were filmed. Um, Maybe that ramp got used later. I think it might have, but it's been a moment. And yeah, I think going forward, Doctor Who should keep being progressive, but really look at things from all angles, because I really think it was really close to being better than what it was. But yeah, it'll be interesting when it eventually does come back to TV. What will the new vision be? Because I've always felt that Russell T had these Deus Ex Machina finales, and it was certainly no exception in this run. And I also hope that certain threads do carry over. There's a thread with Rogue, which wasn't really resolved. And of course, there's that cliffhanger ending, which, with the new face that we saw, or I guess an old face, and it's, I think people are kind of over exaggerating, saying that it's impossible for whoever runs the show next to continue from there, but I don't think it's impossible. I think there is a way that someone could run with that. And even if they do a time skip and wait until way later to address it, I'd be fine with that too. Doctor Who was weird like that. But Yeah, I do think it'll return to TV someday. I just there were certain things I wish were kind of better in this recent run, but in the meantime, there are the audios, there are novels that I haven't read. Um, I hope that the comics have kind of a boom again at some point. We've been pretty light on Doctor Who comics these last few years. But yeah, those are my thoughts, and it is what it is. We'll see what ends up happening in the future. But yeah, that's it for this delayed replay episode. Come back next time for the discussion of Fast. And also remember, if it's June 20th, as you're still listening to this, go to Fountain Valley Summerfest. Gene Wilder, the improv team I'm on, will be performing there at 8 p.m. So go to summerfestfv.com for ticket info. And yeah, it should be a fun show. So thanks for listening. And without further delay, have a good day.